Hi, and welcome back to Elisha's Bones. I'm your host, Stephen Witsick. Glad you could join me again. It's been definitely a little while. We've had to take a little break with all the busyness of the holidays from Thanksgiving. Yeah, it's been that long. Um, I've had a break for station identification, that's for sure. Well, we're back. There's a lot of things that have happened over this time. It's gotten kind of quiet in one sense. I have not been as active and involved as I would like to be, or responding to the things that I should be responding to. But finally, I am here. I'm back, and we got a few things that I want to cover. And the first being is this: standing for the truth. I cannot find the videos, but they did. A night of eschatology. There were six people there, and they were talking about Israel and brought up you know all the different views and how they view Israel, and especially concerning these last days. Is Israel and the events of biblical prophecy or not? Of course, full preterist says no. Partial says, well, I and uh, but the idea is that even other people are saying it's no longer the promised land. Churches replaced Israel, so therefore, the promises that were made to Abraham and all were completed. They're done with. There are no land promises or anything else like that before. So I wanted to take a look at a couple of those things, and it starts in Genesis. When the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation." So, is the Jewish people still a great nation, especially over the history of time? Yes, a lot of descendants. And I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. Have they been a blessing? And right now, no. They've been pretty much a cursing over the people in the last what couple hundred years. Um, So how were they a blessing? Of course, that was because of the Messiah. So I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And if you catch the nuance of that, all the families of the earth, families include generations. It doesn't just mean one generation. So the idea, all the families of all the earth, progeny, before, after, that's what's included in this. And he left with the land of Canaan, passed through the land and then Shechem to the oak of Moreh, and the time Canaanites were in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I give offspring. I will give this land to his offspring." So he built there an altar to the Lord who appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country to the east and to Bethel and pitched a tent with Bethel. And there he built an altar and called upon the neighbor. And Abraham journeyed on, still going towards Negeb. Now, that was the first one. That's him first coming out. Now, several things happened, of course. Um, Lot was captured, and those things that went on. Now, after that, for the things now remember, Abraham is about 75 years old when this time. After these things, the reward of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. "Fear not, Abraham. I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great." But Abraham said, "O Lord God, will you give for me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus." And Abram said, "Behold, you have given me no offerings, and remember my household will marry her." Therefore the word came to him, "This man should not be your heir. Your own son shall be your heir." And he brought him aside and said, "Look towards heaven and number the stars. If you are able to number them, then said, so shall your offspring be." And he believed the Lord, and he counted to him as righteousness. So there was a contract that went on, and the Lord said to him, "Know for certain your offspring will sojourn in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years." We're talking about the Egyptians, right? Captivity. Now, pay attention to that wording, of course. How did he describe it? 400 years. Was it literally 400 years? Yeah, it was pretty much close to that, but wasn't it? That from the time of Joseph until the time of um, Moses was almost 400 years. So, was he being specific or throwing out this vague number that meant something else? Probably not. But I will bring judgment on that nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried in a good old age. Wow, this is just a broad thing that he's given them to them. And they shall come back here in the fourth generation, 400 years. Ooh, fourth generation, 400 years. Isn't that interesting that a generation is not 40 years? 40, 80, 120. That's 140 years, but it was 400, and he says 4 generations. Um, Compare this with what Phil Perez teach. Listen to that. And they shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So when the sun had gone down, on that day the Lord made a covenant and said, to your offspring I give this land from the river of Egypt. What's the river of Egypt? From Nile. The Nile River. To the great rivers Euphrates. Where's Euphrates? Babylon. Nile to Babylon. There's your boundary lines, right? The land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites, and the Mosquitobites, right? He's giving all that land, and he's defined it from Nile River to there. Now, they possessed the land of Canaan with Joseph, all of a sudden, of course, Joshua and Caleb. And they possessed land, the kings. But when did they ever really, from the Nile River, which is part of Egypt, all the way to Babylon, the Euphrates River? That was the land that God promised Moses. Not this little tiny area between Jordan River and the sea, or from the Gulf up there all the way up. Sorry, no, this is the promise of the land right there. That's what people need to remember. That is the land. This is a promise. For I've made you the father of multiple nations. This is 17. Your offspring when you're throughout the generations for an everlasting covenant. Throughout their generations. Everlasting covenant. Not a temporary one. Not one that is be abrogated for any other reason. I will establish my covenant between you, me and you, and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant. So this cannot be the new covenant in the sense of the laws and those things that ended. But this is to the people themselves. That's the distinction. To you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and your offspring after you the land of your sojourners, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession. And I will be their God. There's no stipulation. Right? Because Abraham acted in righteousness, the land was given to him. It was his. Because he was righteous. It was given to him and his descendants. For as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout the generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you, and your offsprings after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. So there's that into it. Shall go 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. As for Ishmael, I heard about you. Behold, I have blessed him, will make him fruitful and multiply. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac. And it was through the circumcision that they were. So, what we have here is a promise to him and his descendants. Without stipulations, the land would be given. Now, if they were to mess up, what would happen? They would be taken out of the land, punished, but there was always a return and a blessing. Always a return and a blessing. So when we go to the New Testament, where's Jesus returning to? Mount of Olives, Jerusalem. Revelations 11, the two witnesses are where? They're in the city called Jerusalem. Now, this being future, and I'm ignoring full progress at this point, because that is still future, Jerusalem has to be established and there. If I was to kick out a verse, here's the other one. I'm going to do this anyway. Ezekiel 14. I am dead tired, obviously. Let's see. Okay. Behold, the day is coming and all that. Okay, that goes on there. They talk about this, the captivity, but then on the day, living waters will flow out of Jerusalem. Okay, so this is not talking about 70 AD because there's no living waters flowing out of Jerusalem. Night and day, half in the western sea continue. The Lord will be king over all the earth, and on that day the Lord will be one, and his name one. The whole land shall be turned to a plain, from Geba to Jerusalem, south of Jerusalem. But Jerusalem shall remain allotted on the city from the gate of Benjamin to the place of former gate, to the corner gate, from the tower of Hanel to the king's winepress, and it shall be inhabited. For there shall never again be a decree of utter destruction. Jerusalem shall dwell in security. Okay? That's the key there. So everyone that survives of the nations that have come against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship King the Lord of hosts, and to keep the feast of booths. And if the families of the earth do not go up, they will be punished. Okay, so Christ comes. God's name is over. Jesus now is ruling over the nations. This is why I am premillennial, and this is what we're describing here as the premillennial. The millennial kingdom. He is there, the survivors of the nations. Now, here's what I want to point out to you. We had Babylon. The people were scattered. That was an act of judgment. They came back. In the time of Antiochus, there wasn't a scattering. There wasn't a judgment. That was just wars. They came back. Unlike Babylon and unlike anything else, they defeated their enemies and reestablished their kingdom. But then, of course, the Greeks took over and they became subjugated to them, then to the Romans, till they were finally destroyed in 70 AD, correct? So, in 70 AD, they were judged again and scattered throughout the world, scattered throughout the lands. Now, so that's two scatterings. Now, we've looked through the real issue, of course, is looking at Old Testament passages, deciding what is literal, what is not. Does this mean this, does that? And the whole problem with what full preterist does is they decide this is literal, this is not, and they go back and forth, and they don't have a hermeneutic as to specifically say why this is to be understood spiritually or analogy or anything else versus why not literally. For example, Ezekiel 37. Israel is said to be dry bones, and it comes back to life. Well, what's the analogy mean? Well, just like a dead body came back to life, resurrection, so will Israel come back to life and be born again. That's following Babylon. Did it happen in that way? Yes. So we go into Isaiah, and we know there are prophecies in there about restoration and things like this. Now, these passages I'm going to be going through, starting in Isaiah 11, is talking about the millennial kingdom. And I'll explain why. You have Jesus coming. Shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his root shall bear fruit. So that's understood. This is literally talking about Jesus. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. This is not some analogy, but this is not even a prophetic language, but a prophetic language is speaking about Jesus. And his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what he sees, and decide disputes by what he hears. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor. And that describes his life, right? And with the breath of the he shall kill the wicked. Oh, wait. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. And with his breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Did he do that during his earthly? No, he didn't. Righteousness shall be the belt of his waist, and the faithfulness the belt of his loins. So this did not happen during his first coming. So it's got to be about his second coming. How do we know that? Well, when he comes, what is he going to establish? righteousness, faithfulness. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the young goat, calf and the lion, fatted calves together. The little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Bears graze instead of killing. Their young shall lie down together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. If you go back to what lion means in Genesis, when he named it, lion means to pluck grain. So there's a restoration going on there of creation. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the cobra. One shall put his hand in the adder's den, and they shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. What is the holy mountain? Zion, Jerusalem. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So, full of the knowledge. We're talking about what's the knowledge of the Lord, that he is ruling from Jerusalem and a millennial kingdom. In that day, the root of Jesse, who shall stand as a signal for the peoples, of him shall the nations inquire, and his resting place shall be glorious. Jerusalem. In that day, the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant, the remains of his people. This is, I think, Phelan and all the others, this is something that was not brought up when it comes to about Israel and the promises of the land. Totally this whole thing. When was the second time they're going to recover the remnant? Well, if 70 AD was the second scattering, then it has to follow that time. Prophecies, what is it? A lot of them. End of days in the sense of the end of the physical sacrifices and all those things were coming to an end. End of that old covenant would be a day of scattering. No question about that. So if that was the second one, then there has to be a day of gathering. And that day the Lord will extend his hand a second time to recover the remnant. And he will bring him in from Syria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush. He will raise a signal for the nations and will assemble the banished of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Those who harass Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not be jealous of Judah. Judah shall not harass Ephraim. But they shall swoop down the shoulders of the Philistines in the west, and together they shall plunder the people of the east. And this makes me, no, I'm not dogmatic. Boy, if that doesn't describe our times right now. They shall put their hand against Edom and Moab, which is on the other side of Jordan. Those are those nations now. And the Ammonites shall obey them. And the Lord will utterly destroy the tongues of the sea of Egypt, and will wave his hand over the river with a scorching breath, and strike it into 7 channels. Is this literal or what? Yeah, you can come up with a million things of what this might represent. But if you take it literally, 7 branches. Has that happened? No. He will lead people across in sandals. There will be a highway from Assyria for the remnant that remained of his people, and there was for Israel when they came up from the land of Egypt. So there's something going on here, and how you describe it. I go further to 19. Again, this is an oracle against Egypt, and how the Nile River will be dried up, and there will be nothing for Egypt, and the head or 10 palm branch or reed may do. But what is going to happen in the day that? Okay, now here's another point I want to bring up. Full preterist says all prophecy is fulfilled, and my problem is, please tell me when this was fulfilled, and you will get 1,000 different answers of it, because no one knows how this was fulfilled. Or, well, I'm saying no full preterist can sit there and tell you how this was fulfilled before 70 AD. It's impossible. They can't tell you this. So let me read it. In that day, the Egyptians will be like women. They'll tremble with fear before the hand of the Lord of hosts shaken over them. And the land of Judah will become a terror to the Egyptians. Everyone to whom it is mentioned will fear, because the purpose of the Lord of hosts has purposed against them, the Egyptians. In that day. Now, when he goes in that day, we're talking about a specific time period, and he has to be talking more literal. Because in that day, this is what literally is going to happen. There will be 5 cities in the land of Egypt that speak the language of Canaan. Okay, that's literal language. I cannot create an analogy for it or say it's some other kind of wording. This has to be literal language. Until you can prove to me that it's not, that's the way we're to take it. And swear allegiance to the Lord of hosts. One of these will be called the city of destruction. Why, we don't know. That is something that maybe we'll understand when it happens. In that day, there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar to the Lord of the border. Altar could be talk about people, a measure of people. So, is it a literal altar? It could be. It could be a church. I mean, it could be a lot of things. But an altar where they sacrifice, I wouldn't say that during the millennium. I don't believe sacrifices bring instituted because Christ is the last sacrifices that was needed. And a pillar to the Lord at its border. It will be a sign and a witness to the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt. When they cry to the Lord because of oppressors, he will send them a savior and defender and deliver them. Egypt, not Israel. And the Lord will make himself known to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians will know the Lord in that day and worship with sacrifices and offering, and they will make vows to the Lord, perform them. And I would summarize as duties, not sacrifices and sins and offerings, but I'm talking sacrifices could be, giving up other things. It doesn't necessarily mean or has to mean animal sacrifices and offerings. And they will make vows to the Lord and perform them. And the Lord will strike Egypt, striking and healing. And they will return to the Lord, and he will listen to their pleas for mercy and heal them. That whole general idea, though, is when in past did God have mercy on Egypt and heal them? In that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria, and Assyria will come into Egypt, and Egypt into Assyria, and the Egyptians will worship with the Assyrians. In that day Israel will be the third with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing in the midst of the earth, whom the Lord of hosts has blessed, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, my inheritance. Can you get that? Please, if one full preterist can tell me when in time this would have been fulfilled before 70 AD, I would bow down and worship you. No, I'm kidding. But see, you can't sit there and say every one of them is done. Now, this is why I call it the millennium. The survivors of the nation that come against Jerusalem has to be from Revelations, has to be the Armageddon. And I can go on a whole lot more about all of that. But the idea is there's something else. It is not. Now, I wanted to kind of bring out a principle here. And I want you to see this. And I want to explain this a little bit. This is the signpost that we find here in Nebraska. And it says what? Cows, please drive slowly. Or are they trying to tell us that there are cows on the road? So what are we supposed to do who are driving? We are to drive slowly. Is the sign saying, cows, please drive slowly? They're telling the cows who are driving to do it? I won't be mean. No. But we understand the context because we live here in Nebraska. We understand there are cows. They get loose. They run around. And sometimes they get on the freeways and the roads. So we have to be cautionary. There was a viral video that went through several times. A woman called up into a radio station and says, I don't understand this. These signs there. They said, caution, deer crossing. Why is it that they allow and create these deer crossings for deer to cross in these sections when there's freeways there? I mean, it could be so dangerous for them to cross. So why do they make them cross those places? And the DJ, bless his soul, he did everything he could to control his laugh and didn't really explain this or anything else, but it was just like the woman got this one perspective and she couldn't see anything else. She couldn't see anything else except that. She assumed that they were signs to direct the deer to cross in these areas. And you go, the utter stupidity of that thought, to think that they can herd deers or deers on their own can read the signs and say, oh, this is where I'm supposed to cross. Same thing here. We understand the context because we understand the culture. Now, the problem with the full preterists is, sorry. They're reading signs like this from a Hebrew thing, and they're going, you cows, you guys need to drive slowly. And they will defend that position till the cows come home. Now, I'm working on a paper. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Oh, yeah, I closed it out. Let me pause this real quick. Okay, so I've got it loaded, and we're going to flesh this out a little bit more. And then, cows, please drive slowly. I'm going to look at a couple of passages and verses of what. The first one is, I'll make it a little bit bigger. Make sure that everybody can see this very clearly. Whoops, it's too big. All right. For these are the days of vengeance to fulfill all that is written. Now, not understanding the Greek, every full preterist says to fulfill all that was written. So during these days of the vengeance, God's going to fulfill all things that are written. Everything that's written. They assume that is all prophecy that is written, period, are going to be fulfilled during the days of vengeance. Instead of taking it the other way, the way it should be taken, the way that scholars have understood it to be for thousands of years. For the days of vengeance that have been prophesied, these are the days of vengeance to fulfill all that was written about those days. Let me take you over to a passage, and I will show you what I am talking about. Now, this is a passage that it blows so many false things about full preterism off the map. Let me concentrate on what I'm doing here. Okay, now this is, I wish I could make this bigger. Right here in verse 49. The Lord will bring against you. I'll kind of outline it a little bit there. A nation against you from far away, from the end of the earth, swooping down like the eagle. Sounds like Rome to me. And a nation whose language you do not understand. Latin. Now, we're looking at either it was the Babylonians, correct? Or it's going to be the Roman Empire. Which is it going to be? But it says eagle. I don't know if the Babylonians were eagles. They're saying, but we know that the Romans were. A hard-faced nation which shall not respect the old or show mercy to the young. It'll eat the offspring of their cattle, the fruit of the ground, till you are destroyed. It won't leave you any grain, wine, or oil, the increase of your herds or the young flock, and they will cause you to perish. They shall besiege you in all your towns. That is not the way the Babylonians did it. They just conquered, tore it down, and took them away. It was the Rosamans who did this. Until your high and fortified walls, which in you trust, come down throughout all your land. They shall besiege you in your towns throughout all your land, which the Lord God has given you. It was given to them. See, there's the idea. That's their land. They were going to be taken out because of their disobedience. This is a curse that will come upon them. You're going to be laid siege by them. And you shall eat the fruit of your womb, the flesh of your sons and your daughters, whom the Lord has given you, in the siege and in the test which your enemies will distress you. Now, he kept using you here, did he? But was he talking about that generation or a generation that was going to come almost 1,500 years later? Obviously, 1,500 years later. This is Moses in the wilderness, about 1,500 BC. It didn't happen until when? 70 AD. my Lord, people, there's no, it's you. So this whole idea that that you can include a, their offspring. It's talking about their offspring that is going to be happen to them. So they are included. Your kids. Um, Eat the fruit of your womb. Josephus records that there was a baby, a woman who had cooked her baby. When everybody smelt the roasted meat, they came to the house and they found her. She had eaten half the baby. She knew that if the baby was found, they would want to eat part of it. So she ate what she could and left the half for other people. But they were so revolted by the whole thing that they walked out and it didn't happen. But it was recorded by Josephus that this did take place. Um, they will not give him the flesh of his children, the most tender and refined woman among you, who would not venture to set sole of her foot on the ground because she is delicate and tender, will begrudge to the husband she embraces, to her son and to her daughter, her afterbirth that comes out from between her feet and her children she bears, because lacking everything she will eat them secretly in the siege and the distress which your enemies shall distress you down. So I don't know any full preterist that says that didn't happen in AD 70, and that's what it's referring to, 1,500 years. So prove to me it's not. Prove to me through historical that it was another time period. Hey, go for it. If you are not careful to do all the words of the law that are written in the book, that you may fear the glorious and awesome name of the Lord, then the Lord will bring on you and your offspring extraordinary afflictions severe and lasting, and sickness and grievous, and they will bring upon you again all the diseases of Egypt, of which you were afraid, shall cling to you. Every sickness also, every affliction, whereas you were as numerous as the stars, and you should be left few in number, because you did not obey the voice of the Lord your God. And as the Lord took delight in doing you good and multiplying you, so the Lord will take delight in bringing ruin upon you and destroying you. And you shall be plucked off the land that ye are entering to take possession of it. You will be plucked off the land. And the Lord will scatter you among the people from one end of the earth to the other, and there you shall serve other gods of wood and stone, which neither you nor your fathers have known. And among those nations you will find no respite, and there shall be no one resting place for the soles of your feet. But the Lord God will give you their trembling heart and failing eyes and languishing soul. Your life shall hang in the doubt before you. Night and day you shall be in dread and have no assurance of life. And in the morning you say, if only it was evening, and at evening you shall say, if it was only morning, because of the dread that your heart shall feed and sight of your eyes shall see. And the Lord will bring you back in ships to Egypt, a journey that I promised you that you should never make again. And there you shall offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but there will be no buyer. These are the words of the covenant, and it was renewed. But those were the curses that were to happen upon them if they failed. But at the beginning part, what was it? The Lord will open to you good treasure in heavens, give to you the rain in your land, season to bless all the work, and you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. And the Lord will make you the head, not the tail. And you shall go up and down if you obey the commandments of the Lord, my God, which I command you. If you don't turn the words that I command you to the right or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. So, prophecy is showing that they've been regathered a second time. For a second time, Isaiah. So there's Israel, there's the promises. And of course, Revelations 11, as I said, you see Jerusalem, you see that there's going to be an earthquake in Jerusalem. The two witnesses are in Jerusalem. They return to the land. That's part of the promises of him being and regathering them a second time. Now, the last part here. Okay. Now, for these are the days of vengeance. That's what they're talking about. Those are the days of vengeance. And so, to fulfill all that was written about what? The days of vengeance. It's only specific to those days of vengeance. So all that was written about those days of vengeance will come to pass. Not all prophecies. How do we know this? Luke 24, he clarifies. Then he said to them, these that are words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and Psalms must be fulfilled. Not every prophecy ever written about everything. He clarifies it, but every word that was written about me would be fulfilled. And that's what scholars have held on to for years and years and years. But they choose not to do two things here. Analogy is faith. They don't go to these other scriptures and try to harmonize it, even though you go back to Matthew, Moses' prophets must be fulfilled. But they won't go to 24 and say everything that's written about me. That won't be included in their paradigm. The second one that comes from Luke is Matthew 5:18. For truly I say to you, until heavens and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from law until all is accomplished. So the full price plays with it. I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away. Okay, what's the heaven and earth? The old covenant. Okay. Until the old covenant passes away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law. Well, that's the old covenant. For truly I say to you, until the old covenant passes away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the old covenant until all is accomplished. You see, you can't play with those words and make them metaphorical. To heaven and earth to mean the old covenant law, because from the law, that is the old covenant. Now he clarifies. Now understand, Matthew wrote to Hebrew, so he's going to use the Hebrew idioms. Luke, who learned a lot from Matthew, that's what we call the, all of a sudden I'm going to forget, the different passages you have, Matthew, Mark, Luke, some of them are identical. And there's a Q document hypothesized that, somebody quoted from there. There was a one there, people quoted from. But the idea is that Matthew wrote, Mark wrote first, Matthew plagiarized some of the things from Mark. Luke did the same thing since he saw and knows Matthew, so he got to get from Matthew while he was traveling with Paul. And then John wrote his own thing completely outside. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke have a lot of things in common, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, because they borrowed from each other. Which indicates that Matthew, especially Matthew and Luke, knowing each other, wrote their Gospels after, near the end of their lives. So, not a dot, not a dot will pass from the law. Now, that's what Matthew wrote. Now, Luke is recording the same exact passage. But who is Luke writing to? Greeks. Is he going to explain the Hebrew idioms? Here we go. But it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one dot of the law to become void. So the idea is it would be easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for any part of the law or the old covenant to become void. Now, what do we mean by void? I've explained this countless times, and doubtless I haven't found a full preterist yet who's honest with themselves, but listens to this. And of course, this is not my own. This is what's been taught for hundreds of years. The idea is simply this. The old covenant is a contract. It's a Caesarean contract written between two parties. Caesarean because you had back in those days two different kinds of covenant contracts. What would happen here is, here's this big, great city. It's got 1 million people, and you've got 500,000 here. You got 5,000 there. Now, if that million decided to attack you, you didn't have much say in it. They were going to kick your butt, take everything away from you. That's it. You're done. You're toast. So what you would do is go to this other city that had 500,000 and say, hey, can we work together? If he attacks us, you come to our rescue. And if he attacks you, we'll come to your rescue. Agreed? Agreed. Okay. So you supply men, food, everything else. The two, city-states working together. That's one kind. The second kind is the Caesarean, where the guy with the million armies comes up to the smaller one and goes, hey, I can kick your butt tomorrow, but I don't want to do that. What I would rather do is build up my armies and become stronger. So what I'm asking you to do is you're going to provide me with food and things like that and men for armies, and I will protect you. Nobody's going to mess with you. If they do, I will come in and wipe out all your enemies. We want you to prosper, have lots of kids, so you can send us a lot of your kids, and there'll be soldiers and servants for us, and food and things like this. We're not going to starve you, but those are the things that we want from you. That way we can get bigger. Do we have a choice? No, you don't. You either do this agreement, Caesarean, or Destroy it. What's your choice? Well, of course, they would capitulate. So when God came to Abraham, it was a Caesarean. I am God. I'm the creator of heaven and earth. I've got all power. And I can kick your butt in 2 seconds. But here's the deal. I want to be your God. I want you to be my people. You will serve me, and I will bless you. That's the covenant. Those are the terms. And conditions later on were built all the way through, including the law and all of those things. So now, here's the entire covenant. Promises, blessings and curses, all of those things, right? Now, it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away. So the literal heavens and earth, it's easier for those things to quit than for one dot of the law, these promises that God made. Even though the people do not, God says, the covenant's still in place. Even though you don't keep the terms, I will kill you. That's what's going to happen. You cannot make not even one of the promises become void. In other words, pass it out. You agreed, this is what's going to happen. You don't keep the commandments, I will kill you. You keep the commandments, I give you life. None of those promises can be voided. Can't be. God is a man of his word. He's the one who struck the deal. It was Abraham who's agreeing to it. It's the people of Moses who are agreeing to it. And otherwise God will come and just wipe you out. He's the one who made the stipulations. And every promise that he made, he has to keep those promises. So not one promise, not one thing about those laws, the terms of that covenant can be voided. The idea is you buy a car, you agree to pay for 5 years, $500 a month for 5 years. At the end of that 5 years, it's paid. You don't pay it, what's going to happen? He's going to fine you, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And they define those terms, and it's called the fine print. The dot, the iota, is the smallest letter. The dot is a punctuation type of a marking. Smallest letters in the Hebrew alphabet, or Greek, I should say. Yeah, but the idea is that in this language here, this is the fine print. That's basically what they're saying. This is the fine print. And all of these little fine points have to be done. Now, in the terms and the conditions, what does it say? If you do not keep my, I will kill you. Jeff Dunham here. And so what happens? Was there one person in all of Israel that was ever faithful to keep the whole law without sinning? Christ alone. Him alone. And they killed him. So the idea is simply this. Christ is the one who died for all those that were under the law to set them free from that law, because if the terms and the conditions have been met, and that in Christ all men died, even though they live, the price has been paid, which was their death, and it was Christ who died for them. Now somebody says, that doesn't make sense. You can't have somebody die for everybody else's sins. It's the argument of God is not going to kill his own son in place of his other kids, and he forced Jesus to die. And the point is, scriptures, it was like God says, what are we going to do? I'm going to have to kill them all because they've done. And it was Jesus who stood up and said, no, kill me. Let me die for them. I will take their place. You don't have to do that. I want to take their place. I want to die for them so that way they can live. And so it was Christ who died, who took our punishment for it and was killed in our place for all mankind. Therefore, we have a choice. And that is the choice of accepting that death on our behalf or rejecting. And then we will suffer the punishment of second death. Because here's the idea. If I was to do, I stole 5 candy bars. And God, you sinned. You're dead. There was no time for repentance, was there? I'm instantly. So after I'm dead, I go, whoa, Lord, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's too late. You need to repent before you. But God, you killed me the minute I stole the 5 candy bars. Right, yeah, that was the punishment. So because you died in your sins, that means you are going to be separated from me forever, and you're going to suffer eternal suffering apart from me. You're going to be sent to a place and away from me, out of darkness. There's no light, there's no nothing, there's no hope. That's where you're going to be sent. It's a terrible place, and there's no hope for you. You chose that's where you're going. Or you can accept me and believe that I died for you and live forever, and you have that second chance. So that was the offering, and the full predators just, if that contract was fulfilled by Jesus, who died for all men, then that means everybody under the old covenant died. Then there's nobody left to carry on the terms. The idea is this: the loan became due for everybody because everybody couldn't pay it. Christ paid it. He paid the price. Therefore, what? And it's kind of the idea is that you're paying for the car. At the end of the 5 years, you didn't pay every payments. They're supposed to take the car away from you. And God says, okay, I want you to have the car. I'll pay it for you. So the minute you pay off the loans, there's no more money to be owed. There's no more contract. The contract comes in because you made the contract for 5 years. 5 years, payments. He made all the payments and made sure all the payments were made. So the contract does what? It comes to an end. When did the contract come to? When he died. The contract came to an end on the cross. Therefore, did anybody owe any other money? No. He was the last sacrifice for sin. There is no more sacrifices needed for sin. He was the last one. Hebrews 10, right? 9, 10. That's it. It was done. But the full predators, they want to tell you that, well, it was okay. I mean, the price has been paid. Jesus died for everybody, but there were still some good Jews, and they were going to the temple, and they were sacrificing. So God honored their sacrifices. Why would God honor their sacrifices when he was sitting there telling them, I sent my son to die so you don't have to make any more sacrifices? Sin has been taken care of. Why are you doing sacrifices when I have already forgiven you? I've made forgiveness through the shedding of the blood of my son. Why are you trampling up? Why are you discarding my son and saying, forget you, screw you, I'm going to keep, and think somehow or another God's going to honor those sacrifices? So no. There was no 40-year transition where God was looking at both covenants and they were being the same. Jesus put an end to the old covenant by the death of his son on the cross. There was no more need for any of it. So he did away with the law. He did away with the sacrifices. And according to Hebrews, he did away with the Aaronic priesthood. He is now the highest priest. We don't need any other priest other than him. And the end of the law. So if there's an end of the law, there's a change in the law as well. And I know I've done a video on this already. You can go back and look for it. If not, I can do it again. But the idea there, people, is to sit there and say that they still need a sacrifice for 40 years is just absolutely crazy, theologically, philosophically, logically, the whole 9 yards. The old covenant had to have ended on the end. I don't care about the temple there. In other words, the temple thing. Think about this. God says, I built this temple and all these utensils and everything else to make sacrifices. Okay, so what if God he came down and he told them, hey, everybody, you don't have to do sacrifices anymore. It's all done. Don't do them anymore. Well, what about the temple and all that? Forget about it. Don't worry about it. You don't need those things anymore. They're done with. Get rid of them. You don't have to use them anymore. I've already taken care of everything. You don't have to go to the temple. You don't have to sacrifice anymore. It's all done. Don't go back there. And the people kept going back. Well, we don't quite believe you. We're going to go over here. And we're going to keep doing it. Fine. I will destroy it. And so in 70 AD, he destroys it all. He takes it all away. He says, now what are you going to do? Uh, we just know that full preterists do not think with their brains. Um, all they try to do is spew out whatever comes across to them from other people and other things, their leaders, their teachers, and they have no idea of how to exegete scriptures, put things together, an analogy. They pick and choose verses. They become blessed in those few verses, but they get all these other verses. They have no way, they have no idea to how to honor them. For instance, one of the biggest things is how many times did Jesus say this? Heaven and earth will pass away. Heavens and the earth will pass away. Heaven and earth will pass away. I see until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota. There's, will heaven and earth pass away? Is it going to pass away? And the idea is, oh, come on, be nice to me. Let's go to Revelations. And this is what we call the end of time. Revelations 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, in heaven coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride. And I heard a loud voice from the throne, and behold, the dwelling place of God is with men. So God is not going to dwell with them. They will be his people. There's your covenant right there from Adam, right? With Abraham. And God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death shall be no more. There's no more going to be nobody after they've been resurrected. Or let's make it the basic. After they've died and gone to heaven, there's nobody that's going to die again. You can't die again once you've been gone to heaven. There shall neither be any mourning, crying, pain, for all those former things have passed away. They're all gone. And he seated on the throne, behold, I am making all things new. And this is not spiritual. There's no such thing as spiritual tears, spiritual death, spiritual mourning, spiritual crying, nor pain, spiritual pain. I'm sorry. Former things. See, they have to play really fast and loose with this. But heaven and earth will pass away. There will be a new one. And God will recreate and restore everything to the way it was and intended in the beginning. Speaking of the beginning, this is the end. Thank you guys for listening. I know I went along a little bit because I had a lot to say. And hopefully we'll get out a little bit more and keep going. So thanks for watching and sticking through this. And hopefully making some sense of everything. You guys have a good night.